So, now I'd like to introduce our authors and moderator. Maggie Thrash is the author of the critically acclaimed graphic memoirs Honor Girl, which was nominated for a Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and Lost Soul, Be at Peace, as well as 2 novels for young adults. Rainbow Black is her first novel for adults and was a finalist for the New England Book Prize. Essie Chambers is an award-winning author and producer. Her debut novel, Swift River, a Today Show Read with Jenna book club pick, won the 2024 Barnes & Noble Discover Prize and was named a Best Book of the Year by the Washington Post, NPR, the Boston Globe, Elle, and more. And our moderator, Liberty Hardy, has worked as a Hollywood book scout, a Book of the Month judge, an indie bookseller, and more. She presently works as a senior contributing editor for Book Riot and is co-host of the popular All the Books podcast. So I'll turn it over to Liberty now.
Thank you. Ooh, everybody hear me? That's loud. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. We didn't plan this, but we're all dressed in black today. So I'm going to give you an easy question first. Either one of you can answer first. If you would just tell everyone a little bit about what your book is about.
I'll start. Can you hear me, everyone? Yeah. First of all, I have to say thank you. You are the champion of all audiences today, coming out at 9 a.m. in the rain. So thank you. So my book is sort of coming of age, mother-daughter story that opens up into this much more sweeping family saga that sort of takes place across many generations. It is about a family in a rural New England mill town, centered around a girl, a 16-year-old girl who is sort of coming of age this summer in the 80s. And she is the only black person in her town after her dad disappeared 7 years prior. So it's about this particular very fraught summer for her, where she sort of gets connected to a relative that she didn't know and makes this discovery about town secrets and family secrets and this really rich legacy that she didn't know that she had.
Hi everyone, and yes, thanks for coming out at 9 a.m. My book, Rainbow Black, I feel like I've kind of in genre, which is the coming-of-age legal drama. My book is set during the Satanic Panic. I don't know if any of you remember the Satanic Panic. It's a real-life phenomenon that happened in the 80s, where all over the country people started to believe in a conspiracy that preschool teachers were in a satanic pedophile conspiracy. And it sounds absurd, but real people, it had real effects. Real people were arrested and sent to jail over this hysteria. And my book is about a young girl whose parents are arrested in this hysteria, and kind of how her life follows. And it's just one legal case after another.
So both of your novels have teenage girls from marginalized communities set in roughly the same time period. Lacey is a poor queer teen in New Hampshire. Diamond is a poor black teen in Massachusetts. And what does the New England setting and time period bring to your story that you don't think would have worked in other parts of the country or another decade? Maggie, I'm going to start with you, since yours is kind of tied to the Satanic Panic, which is like the time period, but why did you set it in New Hampshire?
I mean, I knew the book had to be set in New England because the book is about a modern day witch hunt. And then I really wanted to be set specifically in New Hampshire because it's a book about justice, it's a book about freedom, and New Hampshire with that live free or die motto, it just had to be set in New Hampshire.
And Essie, Massachusetts, small town.
I grew up in a small town, and just weird shit happens in small towns, and I love that so much. And particularly for, mine set in a New England mill town, and mill towns are sort of like haunted by the industry that has left, and so it's got like ghosts everywhere in the form of factory buildings, and the economy has been exploded, and so there's a sort of I love the sort of hauntedness of New England mill towns. And the 80s especially was sort of right when the industry was leaving, and also 80s culture is so awesome and weird, hilarious, and so to have an outsider in the middle of that kind of place made it feel that much more isolated.
I think the contrast too between that 80s color, that color palette of the flamboyantness of the 80s contrasted with the sort of ruggedness of these small town, rural New England areas in the 80s. Like, really cool to write about.
So, Essie, I'll start with you first. So, first novels are often assumed or considered to be autobiographical novels. You know, a lot of readers and reviewers either look for similarities or mistakenly read a book and think that a lot of that actually happened to the author. Are there parts of your lives in these novels?
Definitely, yes. Yeah, everyone does make that assumption about me. That my friends said this great thing to me, that often writers start writing close to their own lives and end up very far, or the opposite, they end up very far and they start very far away from their lives and end up close. And I think I started close and ended up very far. I share the basic facts of the story with my character. You know, I grew up in a very small town in Western Massachusetts. My family was one of very few people of color, and you know, we experienced being outside. You know, we sort of had an insider-outsider thing that was happening that I tried to play up in my story, which was, you know, I had a ton of friends. We were part of a community, but also we were aliens in that community at the same time. And so, you know, we experienced all kinds of racism, you know, from the violent kind to you know, just bigotry of low expectations of us. But I think really what was most confusing was when it came from people that we cared about and that we depended on. And so that kind of disorientating feeling, that was really, I experienced that, and that was the engine underneath my character, who had a much more exaggerated version. You know, they were very isolating ways that I wasn't. And the parent, the really crazy mother, my mother is very sane. And I in fact, I made, this is not the way to create characters, but I made my character, the mother character, as crazy as she was so that my own mother would not recognize herself. And, you know, obviously I added layers that made it more interesting to me. But yeah, so basic facts that I was able to draw upon to pull the emotion to make the characters.
In a basic way, no, my book is not based on my life at all. I'm not even a New Englander. I'm an interloper. I'm a Southerner. I've just admired New England and I live here. I live in New Hampshire now. And Rainbow Black is an insanely dramatic book. You know, this girl, there is murder. She becomes an international fugitive at a certain point. None of those things happen to me, but I think yet. But when you read this book, that is my mind. You will learn kind of how my mind works by reading it, because the way the character thinks is the way that I think. And I guess the other autobiographical aspect I brought to it is that my father is a federal judge, so even though I'm an artistic person, I grew up surrounded by the legal system, and the legal system was kind of like this third parent for me. So that I definitely brought that from my own biography to the book.
How did you write in the voice of a teenager in a way that didn't make it a YA novel? Or, you know, how did you decide you were going to write about a teenager but not have it be a YA novel? Did you ever feel like as adults that the voice would be unrealistic? Like, did you ever think like, wow, I haven't been a teen in a while? Like, no offense, I'm older than both of you. But, you know, like, what, I don't know if, you know, does this sound like what teens sound like? You know?
I still, in lots of ways, relate to the person I was when I was 15 more than I relate to other adults a lot. So in some ways I still feel like I'm 15, but I do not feel like this is a young adult book, and I feel like the distinction is really writing about that time with the perspective of an adult. And it just makes a crucial difference. And having come from the YA world originally, there's like this rule in YA that you have to have hope, you have to have a happy ending at the end. And you know, I believe in hope and happy endings too, but in YA it feels like a law, and if you don't abide that law, you will go to, you know, YA jail. And it felt really great to be free from that, and to be able to show some hopelessness. But the one thing I will say I learned in YA that I brought to adult, another law in YA is you have to believe in true love. And I do believe in true love. So I tried to kind of bring that into an adult sphere, and that was a big challenge, because like, how do you get these, you know, jaded adults to believe in true love again? So read the book and let me know if I made you a believer.
Yeah, that hope distinction is such a key one, because I feel like being a teenager, it's dark stuff. I mean, it's dark. It's like you think you invented pain and heartbreak, and it's heavy, and it's so I love writing about that age. I feel like we're all like stuck at some moment of trauma from those years, and I'm forever a 16-year-old girl. In my former life, I was a television and film executive, and I spent a lot of years making television for a teenage audience, a teenage young adult audience, sort of, as it's about, kind of like I was in YA. And I just have we spend a lot of time with teenagers. I don't have children, and I have a lot of respect for representing their perspective in a way that feels authentic, and not like, you know, wise beyond their years. And you know, it just sort of, I think the thing about a coming of age story is like, it's the tension between this external life that is choking you because you are too big for your surroundings, and this rich internal life where you are growing beyond the external. And so there's so much opportunity to have that rich inner life be, you know, dark and twisted and interesting. And so, yeah, my girl Dinah is pretty dark.
Actually, I don't have children either, and I wonder if there's something there where it's like it's easier for us to really like enjoy
Maybe,
teenagers because
yeah.
we don't have to live with them.
It's so true, it's so true, it's so true. I felt like I was channeling Julie.
So both of your novels have characters who have many difficult, heartbreaking experiences, but both of your books are still filled with hope and love and humor. How important was it to you, like you started to touch on this, you know, to find that light? Like, how are your characters able to move forward from their experiences?
It's a great question. I mean, when I started out writing this, I started coming of age and then it became something else. And in the coming of age, I really understood that Diamond, my main character, was running from a terrible situation. And at a certain point, some of my readers were like, you know, she kind of has to be running towards something, you know, like what is, and so that was really the challenge for me. And when it went from being a short story to a novel is, yeah, what is she running towards? What is, you know, this is a rootless girl who's not connected to a lot of her family, and so I wanted to root her in like that would be the anchor that she was looking for. And again, with coming of age, it's like, it's sort of you're starting in one place. A lot doesn't have to happen with coming of age, like, you know, mine takes place over the course of one summer, 3 months, so I knew that whatever shifts were happening could be subtle, but big inside, and so yeah, I think I was finding hope in having her going from not knowing anything about family to rooting her in family, and then also this is someone who didn't have any friends. Her mother was her entire life, and so she, throughout the course of this summer, she makes her first friend in this girl, this slutty slut is what I call her, named Shelley, who is also an outsider. That's a very 80s thing to be a slutty slut. Well, I guess it can be current now too. But you don't say that now. And so she's making this connection with this person that's having a kind of a similar outsider experience, and so that was really where the hope started to come in, and she could see her life beyond being, you know, sort of enmeshed with her mom.
So Rainbow Black, I've been writing this book for 14 years. I started writing it when I was in my early 20s, and I kept writing drafts, putting it down, starting over. And the first full draft of this book that I wrote in my 20s had a very dark, nihilistic ending. And my agent went to try and sell it, and basically, by the time he was selling it, to be clear, that was the Obama years. And so for me, writing this like dark, edgy book that's like, it doesn't have a happy ending, it just felt kind of punk and cool. But by the time we were selling it, we were in the Trump years, and it did not feel edgy and cool anymore. It just felt like punching. Like, and my agent had to explain to me, like, readers can't handle this. The world is too dark. You need to change the ending. And I did, and I think it made it a better, more mature book. Like, the book kind of grew up with me, and I think bringing a more uplifting ending to it really saved the book, and it kind of saved me as a writer too. It made my mental health better. So I think it was interesting though how this book had to change with the times. As our times became kind of darker, the book had to compensate.
I also think, I feel like, for me, what was fun to play with the darkness was humor. I mean, like, I'm just a dark, that's what I'm drawn to, is dark comedy, and I think that can feel hopeful when someone can find joy and funny stuff in the middle of a lot of pain, too.
I totally agree with that. Like, I will laugh at anything.
It's a coping mechanism. It helps a lot of people to laugh at that stuff. So I'm going to switch over a little bit to the writing side of things as we talk about debut novels. So Maggie, this is not, as we mentioned, your first published book. You've had several, but this is your first novel for adults. Does it feel weird to have people be like, this is your debut, or do you separate them?
It feels exactly like life feels, in a way where it's like once you're an adult, it's like when you were a kid, everything you did is erased, and it's like, well, that was all my kid stuff, and now I'm like this fresh new person, and everything I did before doesn't matter. And you know, I feel like that does feel like life. So I have like my young adults, and now I'm all grown up. And I plan to stay grown up. I have no plans of going back to YA.
And Essie, I read in an interview where you said writing was your first love, but you worked as a television producer and also a documentary filmmaker prior to publishing Swift River, even though you were working on it for many years. And did your other jobs influence your writing? Like, how did that path lead you to finally publishing your book?
Yeah, it's a great question. Writing books was the first thing I ever wanted to do, and I just did not, I'm like oldest child, Virgo, like very practical, and I just could not give myself permission to do it. Even though I had a very, loving and supportive household that was like full of books, and I sort of built an entire career around helping other people tell their stories, which both fed my love of telling stories and also helped me kind of not do it right away, because it was just enough to kind of keep my writing at the edges of my life. But I think, I think a couple of things. I think by the time I really started writing novels, I had a lot more life to talk about. And I also, the TV and the film part, the way that I developed as a storyteller through TV and film before I really started writing books, I do think fed. I think I'm a very visual storyteller. I think there's a kind of structure in episodic television, and I think I internalize a structure and a way of telling stories that kind of gives you permission to be chaotic inside of it. So I know how to. I don't know. It just. I think that there are parts of the way that I write that mimic my experience in television and film. But mostly I think because I'm a very people read the book and they're like, oh my god, I feel this is a movie.
So it is. So either one of you, if you want to start, why do you think so much emphasis is put on debut novels? Like most people don't realize like this might be your first published adult novel, but it might not be the first one that you wrote. But like people are like debut, like whenever someone has one, like why do you think we're so into debuts?
I guess it feels like something like an obsession with virginity. Like, really, like I'm this unspoiled author. Come, like, read my virgin book. No. I think it's totally arbitrary, the obsession with debut, because a lot of times people's debut book is their worst book. And you know, it's never good the first time. Sorry. Of course, we're the exception.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I can't. My mind's spinning things I can't say out loud. I also think it's really hard to get published. Really hard to get published, and I think that is a part of it too. Like just reflecting the fact that like your first is the whole of your life goes into your first book, and then afterwards, I don't know. What are we gonna write about next? Well, you already figured that out. I don't know yet, but yeah, I think it's yeah. I also think it's hard to get published.
So, how did the idea for your novel come about, and did it change? You mentioned a little bit, Maggie, that you both worked on them, 14 years, I read you worked on yours for like a dozen years. You had 10 drafts, do you think that having that much time to write was important to your finished product, or did you learn things that you're like, now I know what I want and what to do?
I definitely, writing this book was my education to becoming an adult. This book, as I grew up, this book grew up with me, and it's been sort of hard to let it out into the world because it was with me for so long. It feels like part of myself that I'm having to let go. And yet that is what life is. It's kind of having to let go of the person you were and with some courage, try to be someone new and work on something new. So I do think probably with both of these books, when you read them, you'll be able to really feel the years that passed as we wrote them, and how I just think that'll be a unique experience for you as the reader.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, mine was almost 11 years. And definitely different parts of me showed up for the different parts of the book, and they were essential. I mean, I had a lot of loss in my life the last couple of years, and that transformed the book, and added all these really, really unexpected layers, and it just wouldn't have been the book that it was when I first started. So everyone has that friend that's always working on a book, and like that was me. I was that was never finishing my book. But I do think I don't know. It's kind of like having a tattoo. It's like there are there are the moments that are just it reflects a moment in time, not necessarily who you're going to be for the rest of your life. I feel that way about chapters in the book and in the book in itself. But I will be much quicker next time.
Me too.
Couple of years.
So. I read in an interview with Crystal Kim, you were workshopping this in 2014, and do you recommend having a writer's group? Do you have a writer's group or a beta reader, other things you think that authors, aspiring authors need in order, like a support group in any way?
I think it's critical. I mean, for me it was. I mean, my creative process, I learned it as a sort of a communal thing, and so I think in a lot of ways, me going to grad school was both because I was a lazy writer and needed the structure of academia, but also because I needed a group, and it was I understood I needed to find my readers, the people with me, because it's a lot to ask people to read your book and your writing, so you have to have a staple of people to pull on. And I had also done a writers group before I went back to grad school. I had adapted a book by the author Jacqueline Woodson. And she and I became friends, and she created a writer's group for a bunch of people in her life who, like me, talked about writing but were not doing it. And so we all became a support system for each other. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Between that group and my workshop group, everyone whom I'm still very close with, had a profound impact on my writing. And so it's such a lonely thing to be in a room by yourself wrestling with all this stuff. So I just getting a writer's group doesn't have to be in an MFA. I think that having people to write with is great.
I have a slightly different perspective because I've never been in a writer's group. I was in an MFA program, but I dropped out. And I have a person And he's my best friend, and we've been best friends since I was 18 years old. He's read everything I have ever written since I was 18 years old. So it's almost like he has this accidental PhD in me, in Brash. And so I make him read, and he's not even a literature guy. He's like a science guy, but I make him read everything I write because he knows what I'm trying to say, and he knows when I'm not doing it right. So I just have my guy, and it all goes through him. And you'll see to Nico, this book is dedicated to him because it all goes through Nico first.
That is the
Just a big burden on him.
Well, the fact that you can. There's no human that I could ask to read multiple drafts. If that was the case, I don't know that I would need other people. That's incredible. What a gift.
To Nico, truly, cheers.
So I have like a million more questions, but I'm going to ask you a few, and then we're going to have audience questions. I assume there are other. I can't see anyone, and I just realized I'm not blinding them with the front of my boots. I'm very sorry about that. So I always find this question very interesting. Have either of you read your book since you finished it?
No.
No, only pieces and readings. I'll do 10-minute chunks.
So do you want to, or are you just like, nope, moving on?
No, when it's done, it's done. I absolutely move on.
Yeah, I cannot.
Is it like, because I know some writers say they read them and then they go, I wish I had changed this, I wish I did that. Like, are you worried you'd be like,
No, it is exactly what it's supposed to be, but
yeah.
It's still hard to. I mean, I love my characters. I miss my characters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not for lack of love. It's just.
It's almost like it's too intimate. It's like I put everything there, and it's very intimate, and I can't really look at myself in the mirror that closely.
Okay, so I'm going to start with you for this next question then, and probably stress you both out. You have these dazzling debuts that have received so much praise. Do you feel more or less pressure for your second novel? You have on your website that you're working on yours. Is that like to hold yourself accountable? Or?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I feel way more pressure. I mean, it's like you write your first book, for me anyway, I just felt like, I don't know if this will get published. I don't know if anyone will ever see it. You don't have anyone in your mind, and now I have everyone in my head. I have the Goodreads people in my head. I have, even though you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, don't look at Goodreads.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I do feel a lot of pressure. But I also feel excited because I kind of know how this goes, and so I think I'm trying to figure out how to shift from, maybe you can talk about this, being an author to being a writer again. I've been authoring for a very long time now, which is like the business of getting your book out into the world, and I'm not a great juggler of both, and so it has been really wonderful to kind of get. I'm in very early stages. I mean, what I think the book is probably going to be completely different than what it turns out to be, but that's just what writing is. But yeah, those two modes are hard for me to juggle.
I definitely feel more pressure as well. I think it has to do more with my personality, though. Like I really like to operate from kind of a defiant point of view. I'm very anti-authority, so writing this book was very much like, you're gonna love me, you're gonna love it, and like, I know you don't know who I am, but you're gonna love me. And now it's like, they do love me. I don't really know like how to accept love. Just like want to keep fighting. So it's weird to write from a point of view like, well, now I'm writing for people who do embrace me and are like expressing kindness and acceptance towards me. And I want to do them proud, but it's a very unfamiliar feeling to me to be like accepted. So it has affected my writing process, but I'm very determined to put out another banger.
You absolutely will. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to open it up to people in the audience. And I've done a lot of these events, and I found that the question that aspiring writers ask most frequently is about agents. How did you get your agent to have her as an agent? So, like, what are those experiences like?
Well, I mean, with Julie, I felt like So I worked on this for so long, and as much angst as I put into the book, like also the query letter. The query letter is what you send out to agents to say, here I am, here's a little bit about me, and please read my book, and say they have to be excellent, they have to be perfect. And so I just agonized over all that, and I said, I'm just going to shoot for the moon. I'm going to query my dream agents. I knew one of her authors who just said, I have a friend who's going to be sending you something. But Julie is decisive. She reads fast, and she read my book she read the first 50 pages in a weekend, and then said, I would like to please send me the rest of it. And then it was like within a week. And the thing about Julie, because she is such a beast, is the leap from being regular Essie to having Julie as my agent in a lot of ways was bigger than Julie to getting published, because it's like, if you have Julie as your agent, you're going to get published. So it was absolutely incredible. And I do think that I do recommend having an agent. I mean, I just think that it's hard. It really depends on the publishing journey that you want. I mean, I know people that like want the self-publishing, like I want control of everything. I want, but if I did not want that, I wanted to.
I think an agent is very important. I have a very different journey with my agent. He was my dream agent. I was Stephen Barr from Writer's House, and I was 25 years old when I started querying him, and my behavior towards him was psychotic. And it's one of these things where, like, because it worked out, it's like a happy story, but it could be like a Lifetime movie, like stalked by my author if it hadn't worked out. Because, like, I kept querying him. This book didn't really exist in its full form yet. I kept querying him books that he rejected because they were terrible. I kept calling him. I kept showing up places I knew he would be. Like, I was truly nuts, but he just saw that there was something in me where, like, I actually could write. I wasn't just pure psycho. And so he signed me on without even having a book yet, and we developed my first graphic novel, Honor Girl, together. And so I credit him with my whole life and my career, because he took just this ball of yearning and to be an author, and he actually pointed me in the direction of what I should actually write. So he had such a profound impact on me.
So, are there questions out there? Everybody's always afraid to ask the first question.
The other thing I'll say about agenting while people are thinking is that I think you do nowadays spend a lot of time working editorially with your agent, and so you really want someone. I love hearing that story that you could an agent without a book. Oh my God! And like I with Julie, I mean we worked on it for months before we actually sent it out, and so nowadays I think that publishers want a pretty fully formed book.
Yeah, nowadays it would be very rare to get an agent without a really clean manuscript that is ready to go these days. There's so much more pressure in the industry. They are so much more strapped for time. You want a really clean manuscript now. Don't just stalk them and say, I promise I can write something the way that I did.
I know that you both commented a little bit about the settings of the book, but I wanted to go back to that because, this is kind of the Milltown and yours, and, seemed like these young protagonists are sort of like just stepping out of their settings and going about being themselves. But there must be some back and forth with the setting that I just wondered if you could comment a little more on how that kind of plays within the character, within your protagonist's character. This isn't the most articulate question.
No, it is. It is in its way a very precise question. For those who couldn't hear, she's asking, like, there has to be something more with the setting. How do you choose the setting? How do you come at it? And I do think there's something more. For me, it's a feeling. I can feel this small New England setting. I can feel it, like, in my heart, in my bones, and it's something sort of indescribable. but without it, and I can feel when I read other people's books, I can feel when the setting is two-dimensional, and I can feel when the author doesn't have that relationship with the setting, and I'll be really missing that. And so it was really important to me in Rainbow Black, like I want that feeling to be present.
Yeah, me too. I feel like that, you know, it's a cliche to say you want your setting to be a character, but that was a really important thing for me. And I think with Milltown, New England specifically, there was a thing that I was playing with throughout. It's sort of like, you know, my character has a very imperfect mother. It's a lot of, the book is a lot about parental failure in ways. So it's like, mother loves you profoundly and is failing you. And I think the setting, it's sort of like home, all the things that you think about when you think about home, safety, but at the same time, this particular setting was also dangerous and scary. And so that tension between those two things, speaking to what you were saying about the interplay, like that was very important to me, to have this beautiful setting that was haunted by a very dark history that you learn about in the book that's a part of American history. And I think, you know, I'm playing a lot with like racism in the North versus the South, and I think the North gets a pass a lot of times, and it should not. And so that was really important to me because of the kind of story that I was telling. So like playing with those disparate things was very much represented in my setting.
And you grew up in New England.
I
You
did.
moved here recently. Like, what about New England makes it different than any other place in the country?
I mean, I'm from the South, and I'm never going back. I love New England so much. When I first set foot here, I left the South. I came to Hampshire College in Massachusetts, and when I first saw New England, it was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen, and I just felt like I was home, even though I'd never been here. And I've never stopped loving New England, and I never will, and I feel so honored to be kind of adopted by New England as a New England author. It means so much to me.
Yeah, it's in my bones. I mean, I was born in Vermont. Like I had such a specific experience of this place, of like just really, really, truly beautiful. You know, I'm a nature girl. I like to camp. It's a stunning place, and the people are my people, and I feel like I have so much to pull from to tell my stories because of how, you know, sort of the richness of the culture and the landscape and the people and all those things. So I think one of the things we were both in the same category for a New England Book Award, and it felt like they liked me. You know, it just felt like it's so wild to be, you know, like a part of the canon, you know, like in a lot of ways, particularly as someone who was an outsider. It was very validating.
Well, and just between us, like there's a stereotype that Southerners are stupid, but I mean, I came here and I was like, oh, this is what it's like to be in a culture of literacy, to be in a culture of intellect. Like, this is what it's like where you can expect average people read books. Like, it was just amazing.
So fascinated with questions and hearing about process, right, the creative process. So Hawthorne famously drove himself crazy, always thinking while he's writing, whereas like either Matisse or Monet, who painted for 3 hours in the morning, and that was it. So you said you hate the writing process, it's the hardest part, you love it. When you write, how you write, are there snacks? Is it quiet? Is it music?
Oh, it's such a good, I love these questions.
Or is it alcohol? Like, what is
Yeah, I wish I could drink and write. That is not possible for me. I don't know about you. I cannot. It's just not possible. It's a great question, and I will qualify saying like writing is torture, but there's nothing that makes me feel better than writing something good. Nothing in the world. So it is a high-low thing for me. I couldn't do anything else and feel as good. But nothing makes me feel bad than wrestling, because it's just this.
It sounds like an abusive relationship.
It does. I'm excited because I do think that some of that pressure will be gone with the second book, because I figured a lot of it out. But that's also because I'm not forcing myself into a box anymore, right? Like to your point, I know that what works for me is no sound. I can't write in I have to be in a cave of silence when I'm being generative, and then when I'm writing dialogue, and I like to listen I like to be in public spaces to listen for I love the rhythm, and I really like on the sentence level to have things feel like musical and rhythmic, and so I like listening to people talk and conversations, and I always have a soundtrack that I create for whatever I'm writing. I write with books next to me because I want voices in my head of people that I really love. She's asking sort of what drives your idea, I'm not able to articulate it. It's sort of the flow, what kind of flow you have.
Is it the idea?
The idea or the writing?
Equilibrium.
The equilibrium of it. It's a beautiful question. I think part of the key is to allow yourself to go with whatever where there's momentum and feeling. I'd be flexible enough to change and start off. I mean, writing is editing. It's all of it. And so you may start with an idea. For me, I'm often starting with a character. I mean, different writers start with different. Some writers start by wanting to answer questions. I generally start with an idea for a story and a couple of characters, and I never end up anywhere near where I started. And so this is the fun part. I know I said it's torturous, but really not knowing where you're going and trusting that something is going to come through you at some point, and having faith that if you just show up, and for me, surround myself with things that make me feel comfortable and that I love. That flow that you're talking about is essential. I think when I started writing, I would get very stuck on the first sentence, the first chapter, firsts of everything, and it's just, you have to move through because you're always going to come back and refine and have different perspective as your characters are evolving. And I write very voice-driven characters, so I'm always trying to figure out the key to their voices so that they're distinct, and so it is figuring out what your flow, for me, figuring out the flow and then just being it.
And I think the word you used, equilibrium, is perfect. I think that's what I'm usually searching for, and as I alluded to, I'm so desperate to be in the act of writing that it's very easy for me to go with a terrible idea, but then just write like 50 pages of it. And it's kind of my agent's job to be my cop and say no, this is a terrible idea. This is a terrible book. Because I'll just go. And for every book that I have published, I have maybe 10 on my computer that are worthless. So, for aspiring writers, just keep writing. Give yourself permission to write totally worthless books because something good will come out of it.
Are you surprised when you hear the terrible feedback? Does that feel...
Oh, I'm always and then I think about it for 5 minutes and I'm like, yeah, he's totally right.
Okay, well, thank you both so much. I can't believe I'm talking to the author of even one of my favorite books from last year, but both of you in one place. It's been amazing. In case you couldn't tell from the conversation, their books are incredible. Thank you both. You can get them out in the lobby. And enjoy the rest of your rainy New England day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.